It is Wednesday, the 29th of January 2025, and I'm reading Vacation. It's Joan Marshall Grant's book about her trip through France with Charles in 1946. It was published 1947. We are coming towards the end now, and this chapter is entitled FERME. We had gone to bed at 5, and at 8 I tried unavailingly to stay asleep. But the sounds of Charles bustling about were too incessant. He flung the windows still wider open, and I burrowed down to try to escape the draught. "It's Sunday," I protested. Must you be hearty every day of the week? May have escaped your notice that the car is abandoned on the Pont Saint-Michel. No doubt it is already causing obstruction. At any moment, infuriated gendarmes may hammer on our door. I'm sure they will be quite charming. I can hardly wait for the chance to make their acquaintance. Then you had better make yourself more presentable, he said, unkindly. A mumble from under the bedclothes, part of an ear, only half-open eye, and a few strands of unbrushed hair are unlikely to make them aware of your attractions. If I was a treaty, I should be covered in cream and curlers, and you wouldn't dare to jolly me, I retorted, retreating with dignity to the bathroom to soak myself awake in hot water. We then began to argue about the best procedure. Charles wanted first to inspect the car and then seek a garage. I preferred the telephone approach. He offered to leave me to try my method while he pursued his. This struck me as highly unpractical. Obviously, within a few minutes I would secure a crane from a garage willingly immediately to repair the car. What point in my arriving with a breakdown gang to find Charles had already made other arrangements? How should I enjoy spending the day hunting for him all over Paris? Then you can stay here and I will fetch you when the matter has been dealt with satisfactorily, said Charles. Why should I waste the morning while you have interesting adventures? Charles sat down on the bed and lit a cigarette. It is clear that you are determined to be difficult. Therefore, as usual, you must learn by experience. Take that damn telephone and see how far it gets you. With calm, I removed the little monster from its hook and gave the number which I thought was most likely to produce results. It crackled and gave off the squeals and buzzes natural to its kind, and the hall porter announced that I was connected. By shouting to a friend, I managed to get several numbers of garages. Then his far-away voice said that he would be most willing to help me, but had been summoned to London for a conference and was already late for his train. This was a blow, but at least I had several garages to try. 3 times the porter announced that there was no reply. Then the instrument gave a screech like a parrot and lapsed into sullen silence. I banged it gently on the wall, juggled the hook, but still it refused to respond. "It won't work," I remarked rather unnecessarily. "No one but you would have expected anything else," said Charles. "Perhaps you will now make up your mind whether to stay here or come with me to the car." As it had been my intention to come with him from the beginning, I graciously permitted myself to comply. The sunshine was pleasantly warm, and by the time we reached the bridge, we were in better humour. Gendarmes were plentiful, but none of them paid any attention to us or the car. I was a little dashed by their lack of interest, for I had cherished a picture of myself, mobilizing a quantity of them at our assistance. We asked a passing motorist where we could find a garage. He said, "But it is Sunday, there are no garages open," and drove away before we could go further into the subject. "This is ridiculous," said Charles. But there were no garages open. Upon the street we would be littered. If there were no garages open, the streets would be littered with breakdowns. He agreed to come into a cafe facing the bridge to have some coffee while we made further plans. There was a telephone there, and I hopefully tried the last 3 numbers on my list. And no reply signal was the only result. Then I had another flash of inspiration. Obviously, I should get on to the Citron works and ask their advice. Even Charles admitted this idea might be sound, and I returned to the telephone with renewed confidence. This time it was answered, apparently by an ape, who had not yet learned a word of French or English, except FERME, which he bellowed at me. I tried to make him understand that even so he could give me another number, but he only made uncouth sounds, which I think meant that he was the caretaker and not interested in cars or their ailments, and banged down his receiver. Reluctantly I admitted that I was not being a marked success. I started dear, now I don't know when that stopped. The battery is low again. Okay, so she speaks to Marguerite. "We are in slight difficulty with the car. Can we come round to ask your advice?" "But of course, I'm still in bed, but we'll be up in an hour." We had some more coffee and suddenly remembered that the boot contained 2 large china fish, 4 tins of champignons de Paris, a tartan umbrella which had been left by a friend, a magnum of cognac, 2 ashtrays, and 17 books. We managed to find a taxi and took them back to the hotel. Even when we took everything out of the car, none of the gendarmes displayed the slightest interest. We reached the Rue Chanoinesse at 11, and though Marguerite explained that nothing functioned on Sunday, that even doctors were disinclined to take on a case, and ambulances usually refused to convey patients to hospital, she telephoned without respite in our cause. "But we're leaving on Tuesday, and the boat sails at 2 o'clock, said Charles, clinging to the hope that his plan could still be fulfilled. She smiled sympathetically and dialed yet again. Eventually, an appeal to SVP, the equivalent of Selfridge's Information Bureau, suggested 2 more possibilities. The first was answered by someone who decided to be rude. Marguerite proceeded to annihilate him with exquisite politeness. "What a tragedy it is," she said gently, "that you find yourself in a métier which you are totally unfitted to fulfill. Your parents should have had the humility to select for you a different profession, one in which courtesy and intelligence are not required. You have my most profound sympathy." But after the next dialing, her voice took up a new inflection. "By 2 o'clock? At the latest? Yes, we shall wait on the bridge. It is an English citron, unmistakable. The matter is of the greatest urgency." She sank back in her chair, and we regarded her with awe and gratitude. 2 hours, said Charles, 2 hours, solid telephoning, and you never lost heart. Marguerite lunched with us at the Petrol, where from a window table we could watch for the arrival of the train. At 2:30 Charles began to glance anxiously at the clock. With a smile she reassured him. The driver said 2, but he had not yet lunched. Naturally, he cannot be here before 3. The crane arrived at 3:15. At the last moment, Charles could not bear to abandon the car to a garage where she might not be bedded down in comfort before her operation next morning. He clambered up on the seat beside the driver and left me standing forlornly on the familiar bridge. The Citroën, with her front wheels in the air, looked pathetic as a black spaniel begging for buns. Right, and the next chapter is entitled Well Met. Have a lovely Wednesday.